Hello and welcome back to Something Rotten. This is Season 5, Episode 4. Blake and I have finished Call of Duty World at War. In fact, I think we both won. We won the wars.
I won World War II. Go me.
And everything was very cool, and there was nothing to think about within it.
No, I don't know, Jacob. The end of this game leaves you with 12 words, much to ponder.
Here's the thing.
Yeah?
I feel like almost every episode of this show, or every game,
Yeah.
in the first part, I've been like, I don't know about this, and in the second part, I'm like, I don't know, I think I know about this.
Okay.
Kind of on the same track this time. Last week, we had esteemed guests, Reed and Ed, on, who I thought had a lot to say that was super smart, but also I think were pretty, for good reason, hard on this game.
Sure.
And I think this week I saw more what people like about the story, I think. And I am excited to talk about that. How about you? Just overall thoughts?
I agree. I think the back half of this game is infinitely more interesting than the front half, which I did enjoy. I will say, though, it does have one level that I would consider the worst of nearly any game we've played.
And just in terms of playing the actual game.
Yes, there was one level. We'll get to it. It was about halfway through what we played for this episode. I would say it's probably not an exaggeration to say it took me between 15 and 20 tries.
I was swearing at this game in a way that I do not often do while playing games. It's I played Dark Souls or whatever. I don't get tilted. And I was like in some of these missions, I was like, fuck you. I was just yelling at my computer. So yeah.
What difficulty were you playing on?
Just normal.
Same. Yeah, there is one. I'll be curious to see if we had the same issues. But man, I fought the temptation, but I did almost go to YouTube and type in World at War playthrough. But I didn't. I played the whole thing myself.
Can you not? I guess this is maybe too early to be able to switch difficulties mid-campaign.
You cannot switch, because I tried. Because it was there was just a point, it was never a skill issue. It was just the game was throwing some bullshit-ass 2010 game shit at me and killing me, where I was like, dude, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Anyway, we're jumping the gun.
I mean, genuinely, look, games have gotten better in some ways, worse in others, but thank God that almost every game will just let you adjust the difficulty, at any time now.
Yeah. So you sound hotter than maybe you were last episode, or at least hotter than I myself, I Reed, and Ed were. So talk me through this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think last episode, one of the things that we talked about was kind of what is it doing with these kind of themes that it is invoking, and also the sense of does the game have a plot that is not just there is a war, and I think generally I stayed where I was last week, which is I think the Soviet stuff is just way more interesting than the kind of Pacific Front stuff. And just the end of the Soviet campaign, I was pretty compelled by, and I also think there is some interesting Call of Duty politics going on there, but in general, I was just I see the point they wanted to hit.
Sure.
I think, and I thought that was really neat.
So we talked about this a little bit in the first half of the game, where this is just an angrier Call of Duty, especially in the Soviet stuff.
Boy.
The Soviet missions open just out for blood. That somehow goes through the fucking roof in the back half of this game. It is vicious. And I'm I think maybe of two minds on A, what they're trying to say, and B, the actual landing of it. But even the Pacific missions, by the end, the Americans are kind of bloodthirsty in a way that was not super prevalent in the first half. This game is dripping with poison at times.
Yeah. And I think it's I kind of want to talk through. I just want to start talking through the levels, actually, because I think that I don't want to kind of give my big thesis
Okay.
or whatever right up front, because I think we'll kind of get there naturally. The first mission that we played was Blood and Iron, which is, I would say, a pretty not good. This is the tank mission.
It has the potential to be fun. There's a lot of good power fantasy stuff in it where you're blowing up towers and you got a flamethrower. I realize this sounds just like I'm a psychopath.
I mean, here's the thing about video games. When there's like a big tower and you can shoot it with a gun and then it blows up, that's good. You can't deny it.
On the other hand, I didn't know World War II had homing missiles and enemy tanks were equipped with them at all times.
It's really, yeah, I feel like the impression you get, and I think the impression you're supposed to get through basically all of the back half of the Soviet levels are like, they are steamrolling. You know, that the Germans have effectively lost, and the Soviets are just like, just leaving, you know, like burnt nothing in their wake. And I believe that's kind of the idea here, is like you're driving the tank, but there are just too many other tanks. Like what the level feels like is like a normal Call of Duty level, and if you just replaced the guy you play as with a tank, where it doesn't really feel like you're doing tank specific stuff, you're still just like peeking around corners and like trying to like take pot shots at guys.
Yeah, trying to exploit like the architecture of or the geometry of the level so that you can shoot someone but they can't shoot you back. Yeah.
I did like the point, it classic Call of Duty moment, but again, I think it works thematically a little better here, of when you're rolling over, you're kind of about to get screwed, and then there's a big wave of like Air Force that comes in and just blows everything up. You know, they like, I feel like those moments are always supposed to invoke the kind of like, oh, it's hopeless, what are we gonna do? Thank God the planes are here dropping bombs. But like, you know, I thought it was pretty good. I don't know if COD 2 had a tank level.
You
know, because COD 4 certainly didn't have any vehicles, and then they have, other than the AC-130, and then there's been kind of more driving introduced, but it is, you know, it is an interesting thing of like, especially in a future level, there is so much effort put towards reminding you, like, hey, you're a guy in a machine, and in this, it is kind of, I would say a little disappointing that it's just like, you're a tank. And not like you're a guy driving a tank. Just like, does that make sense?
So, I've looked it up. The intrepid reporters at Fandom have detailed the wiki of every tank in the Call of Duty series. And tanks did appear, at least in Call of Duty 2 and 3, though it's unclear whether or not you could drive them. Though I have learned they did have...
Yeah, I mean, there are tanks in COD 4 if you can't drive them.
One of the interesting things, though, they had randomly generated names.
Oh.
There you go.
Well, I feel like that's still true of, like, you know, your privates here. It's almost like the Yakuza games, you know, where it's like you're fighting a random dude on the street, and it's like, sorry, dude, your name is Rio, you're going through the fucking wall.
Yeah, they should have named all the enemies like the RGG games. Well, I guess also Naughty Dog does that. You know, Naughty Dog made such a big fucking deal about like, oh, your enemies have names now. And it's like, Yakuza 1 did that in like 2005. Creatively bankrupt assholes.
So then the next level is you get out of your tank, you are now going like building to building, shooting more Germans. There are a couple interesting things about this. One, it is returning to just the theme that we talked about last week of like, shit is just ruined. You know, like you are just seeing things in absolute disrepair. But then you go into an asylum, which is maybe just like a fun place for them to set a level, but I did think was like, oh, you know, this is interesting.
Who is the leader of the Soviets? What's his name?
Reznov, right?
Reznov. Okay, now look, you are not going to catch me sympathizing with Nazis, real or digital. But at what point are we going to talk about the fact that Reznov is a war criminal and a terrorist?
Well, so this is, I mean, this is what I think. This is what I think the game is doing, and we can bring it up now, and then it gets more clear through other things.
Yeah.
I think the point that this game wants to make is winning a war can be scary. You know,
Sure.
that even though we know the Nazis are the baddest guys in history, the kind of emotion of taking over your enemies and you know, like wrecking house and doing it for you know, a just cause can in itself be a kind of terrifying thing.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why Call of Duty can do this is because I think they're basically counting on us understanding, us as like the normal Call of Duty players, that like the Soviets become the bad guys.
Yeah.
You know, like the average Call of Duty player, their dad told them, "Hey, you know what, son? Communists are terrible." And they see that hammer and sickle, and they're like, I know these guys, they might be good now, but they're going to be bad later.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's able to give this kind of, like, you can show the, you know, the winners doing war crimes, basically. And it's able to be a commentary on how winners do bad things, but it's okay because you're not playing as the American military, you know?
Yeah. So like, I think I was thinking a similar thread playing, especially through this back half. And honestly, it's a lot of the Call of Duty in justify the means, get our hands dirty to keep the worlds clean type shit. I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but it worked out that way. And you know, this game does take steps to, I don't want to say humanize the Nazis, but show.
I think you can say that.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah. There's
show them like suffering, show them
Yeah.
kind of in pain.
And fear. I mean, there's a point where you can make the decision to kill a group of 4 Nazis or not, and the outcome of that is very interesting. If you decide to not shoot them, someone else will just throw a Molotov cocktail onto them and burn them alive. I don't think it gives the same consideration to the Japanese army, which I would
totally
say
agree.
across the board. And look, I'm not going to act like Japan was innocent in World War II. Obviously, everyone was committing some war crimes and atrocities back then. But I do think they are painted as just like savages in a way that the Nazis
like animalistic.
in a way that Nazis are not in the game. I don't want to say it's sympathetic towards them, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it has a different lens towards those people. So with all that said, like, I think the game is trying to say, like, hey, you know, everyone was doing some bad shit. But on the other hand, the good guys won. The Americans did the right thing, right? And it's like, I don't know. Like, that seems like 2 disparate ideas we're talking about here. Like, beep, 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 beep. Jacob, I've got huge news for you. And I've just learned this right now. Some people grow hair on their legs and choose to shave it off.
This is the first time I've ever encountered this information.
I've got even more huge news. Hold on to your butt. Hinson Shaving, that company that sponsors this podcast, works just as well on legs and faces. And it doesn't say this in the script, but other places, fair game if you ask me.
This is crazy to hear right now.
It's wild because those normal cartridge and disposable razors marketed for people's legs cost even more than the face ones. Or you could just get a Hinson with a free pack of blades that does all of it. All you gotta do is go to hinsonshaving.com and use the promo code ROD. Do I just blindly agree that, like, it's good that we dropped an A-bomb on Japan and, like, ended the war, even though a lot of bad shit happened? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's also the flaw of just war philosophically. Like, Call of Duty isn't going to answer that problem, but
Right. Well, I think that it can actually get closer to not answering it, which is, I think, maybe the correct stance to have when it is not talking about like Americans or British or people that the player is naturally going to align themselves with, because it's like, you know, in Modern Warfare, both the old one and the new one, we see Price do some fucked up shit, but we're like, hey man, I'm him. Like, even if I'm American and he's British, like, I get that we are on the same team. And I think that by making it, you know, like, putting such a heavy focus on, like, you are playing as Soviets, you know, like, you are playing as these people who you probably in your everyday life do not think of yourself as on the same team as, it can, you know, it can kind of be like, are they going too far in a way that they're never able to convincingly sell when you're playing as American troops?
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and I think like maybe one part of that, like to lending credit to your point, is like Reznov is largely just shouting propaganda at his
Oh,
soldiers
sure.
the whole
Yeah.
time, in a way that the Americans are not like, you're fighting for Mother USA or whatever. Like he's constantly talking
Hmm.
about like, you're fighting for the motherland. It's an honor to do this. It's an honor to die for your country. Like he's spouting a lot of as far as I see it, bullshit for any country to spew. Is like,
Yeah.
you have earned the right to die at 19 for your country. Like, I think that sucks. Obviously, it's not an original take. But I think that lends, like, credence to your point of just, like, hey, like, we all, if you're an American, you probably don't have a great view of these dudes these days, Like, it's interesting. There is an kind of I don't know if dissonance is the right word, but playing this in 2023, the last act being putting the Russian flag up was kind of interesting as like
Well, but yeah, I think that's totally supposed to be.
Sure,
Like
yeah.
I think that it's not, we don't feel differently about the Soviet Union in 2023 than in 2010 necessarily. So I think you are supposed to, we're skipping way ahead. This is the last thing that you do in the game essentially. But you get on top of the Reichstag and you tear down the Nazi flag and you're like, fuck yeah. And then you put up the communist flag, the Soviet Union one, because that's not, they're not defined by whatever. But, I think the moment that a player is supposed to experience there is like, oh, like that, not like we did it, planting the American flag, but like we defeated an evil, but oh my gosh, are we another evil? And again, they can't do that with America. So they are doing it with the Soviet Union.
They should do it with America. Because
Yes, I know, I agree.
the final cutscene of this game is the actual footage of the, I don't know if it's Big Boy or Little Man or, whatever the name. I don't know which explosion it is they use the footage from, but you see the Enola Gay, you see all that. And it's basically like, we did that. All right, here's the credits. And it's like, hey, wait, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, we should have maybe put this 2 levels before and had a moment to talk about this A-bomb. Like, it does feel like it just, like, goes straight to the credits.
It is interesting. But the last thing that it says before the credits is just 60 million people died.
Right.
Which I do think is a pretty, like, I don't think this game ends gung-ho-ly at all, which I was impressed by. Maybe a low bar, but just ending and being like, hey, you want to know what happened in World War II? 60 million people died.
I agree. I don't think it's like a triumphant view for the Americans, but I do think there's some amount of hand washing there where it's like,
for sure,
it's like, hey, we dropped that bomb, a lot of people died. Anyway, here's some guitar tracks over the credits. And it's like, I just think you need to hang on that for one more level,
Yeah, because I think, generally talking about the two like bits of the campaign here, I think we are supposed to think about the Soviets and the Japanese being essentially two sides of the same coin, in that they are both fairly fanatical and willing to do pretty messed up shit to win.
That's interesting. Yeah. This is a fault of mine. I didn't really even consider that, but that's really fascinating.
I think it goes with your interpretation of like, it's an angry game. It's like, who are the angriest people in it?
Yeah.
It is the Soviets and the Japanese. And so I do think that there is, we're supposed to think about those as like, hey, it takes some walking, but you can kind of see a world in which the game is empathizing with the Japanese fighters, because it's kind of saying like, hey, think about what it feels like to play as the Soviets here.
Yeah.
This guy is yelling propaganda at you and you are killing surrendering soldiers, and you understand that it is for a good cause, maybe. And so if that's true, why wouldn't you feel the same way if you're, doing kamikaze, like runs on a ship or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, I think that is where the thread of anger is going. But it's kind of like the weird part there is like, well, then what are the Americans in that equation? Are they're just like a neutral good? Because we know that that's not true in world history, but it's certainly, like in World War II and through the Call of Duty perspective, the Americans are kind of just like, well, they're the ones who are like gonna do the right thing and clean things up.
Yeah, but like to your point, like America entered World War II just initially on like a revenge mission, right? Like they weren't stepping in until Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, this is one of those kind of like historical things that I feel like I'm just not
Sure.
well versed enough in, and it's like I'm sure that there were when America entered combat, they were also posing it as, we are opposing a great evil, which they were. I'm not saying they weren't, but yeah, the question of like, well, you weren't doing it until you personally were attacked, so it does feel, revengey. But in this game, I think up until basically the very last American mission, they don't seem angry and they don't seem motivated by revenge. They seem purely kind of good in a way that the Soviets do not.
There's some interesting stuff in the interstitial cutscenes, effectively the loading screens for this game, where they get into the fatigue and exhaustion of the American soldiers that the game never does anything mechanically interesting with, which I think is unfortunate. But I do like the brief exploration of, there's like a splash screen that's like 1,000-yard stare. People are getting bit by mosquitoes and everything. Like you do play a level in Okinawa that is like raining constantly. That's kind of interesting. But there's some interesting stuff there. I just think the game is not interested in tackling mechanically beyond those cutscenes.
I think it is related to what Ed said in that, like, in the previous episode about like the shooting feels kind of like limp in this game. I think because it's supposed to be so snappy, and because it's so snappy, then you always feel like a Superman, even when you're being told, I've been in the trench for months or whatever.
This is a dumb aside, but there's one gun, I think it's only in the Soviet levels, it's an assault rifle, that sounds like someone just hitting a empty soda can. It's one of the worst sounds I've ever heard in a video game.
Oh, I know exactly the one you're talking about. Yeah.
It's like, ping, 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 ping. It's like, what? Did you all even try on this one?
I believe that is, like gun sounds for games are it's such an interesting art, because I believe that they went out and recorded, gun footage. Like, right. I don't think that they're just making that up wholesale, but maybe just how low they've mixed them, or maybe kind of like removing the bass or whatever. Yeah, it just feels like you're holding a toy. It's very weird.
Let's talk about the Pacific Theater a little bit. You play a mission on a gunner machine. I don't know what you call this. Did you like this?
Can I make a statement? One of my favorite turret levels in basically any game I can think of.
Wow.
Like, I mean, mostly I think turret sequences are bad, so it's not that high of a bar, but I was really impressed by this level.
Hold on. Didn't you play Gears of War 5?
Yeah, what's the turret sequence in that?
Well, you set up the turrets on the like tower defense parts, and those are always really fun. You got the hordes coming in. It's really good.
Oh, I think that's Gears 4.
Whoops.
Because I didn't play Horde mode, which I should have. Let's download that game.
I will literally do it tonight. Anyway, I think this is the coolest mission in the game. To your point, I think it's so cool that it's basically like, hey, bro, you got to run between 4 different guns throughout this level.
Yeah. So you're on one of the B ships, either a B-17 or a B-24 or something, but one of these like. Essentially a proto AC-130,
right?
Because it's an aircraft that has 4 different turret positions and kind of a couple different kinds of guns on them, and for whatever reason, you're the only gunner on this ship, and so you are. I mean, at the beginning, you're just kind of flying home, right? Like, it doesn't feel like you're ready to enter combat.
Yeah.
But it starts with you in the air, and you are shooting down at Japanese ships in the water, and then eventually things go to shit, your aircraft is grounded, and you are firing then both at boats and at Zeros, at Japanese aircraft that are flying all over the place. But, and this is what I was talking about the tank, the physicalization of the turret is just, I like, it is really, really cool in a way that I feel like I haven't seen before.
Yeah, this is a small dumb guy detail. I like that there's pinups all across the plane above where the guys are stationed. I think that's a fun touch.
Hey, I mean, we've seen those. Yeah, but talk about like the act of, you know, switching positions here.
Yeah, I mean, every so often it'll be like, hey, press F, you need to go to a different gunner. You'll have the dudes yelling. It's like, oh, you know, they're planes or there's boats to the right or left, and you have to physically move over there, which is effectively just a one button press, and your guy automatically walks over there. But it is like this cool dynamic level of like, you know, you're constantly switching your perspective from straight ahead, down below, to the right, to the left. The plane is up in the sky at one point, then it lands in the water to, you know, provide support that way, and you start trying to pick up, you know, your friendlies that have been cast from their ships. Like the game is, or the level is throwing like a ton of different things at you and never standing still.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of a problem in this game, is like it's too easy to stand in one spot and kill like literally 40 dudes. This level is constantly making you move and giving you new objectives and giving you new targets. That's like very dynamic and fun, even though it is kind of effectively on rails.
Yeah, and I think part of the switching position thing is like, one, it's so effectively mocapped. You know, I really like when like a character steps through a door and you can see them like putting their hand on the door in front of you. It's like, it feels like you have more of a body here than in even like the missions where you're freely running around. You know, Call of Duty is never a series where you've been able to like look down and see your legs. But here you can. And it also like, it makes you understand the plane that you're on so well.
Sure.
Whereas like in the AC-130, you were just kind of looking at a laptop screen. And so it's like, I don't know what the inside of that plane actually looks or feels like. But in here, it's like, when you go to that front gunner seat and you're fucking just like crammed in between the two pilots, and you think about like how tight and how hot that seat would have been. And, you know, it's like, I know, even with the little that I know about World War II, the you know, people in these turrets, I think, were just like, here's hell, you know, like, here you go. This is so uncomfortable to be in. And then, in the second half, just like absolute chaos breaks out where you are shooting at planes and boats, and you were trying to help people into the aircraft, and like everyone is screaming, just like it's like a kind of cacophony that even in a game as loud as this, I was like, oh my god, where it's just like there are just like 12 people yelling different things at all times.
Well, and crucially, compared to turret sections of other games, which are just like a fucking power trip, like you feel like you're fighting a losing fight. Like, like you literally run out of bullets at one point, and that is the end of the level, and then, you know, everything's fine. But, like, it doesn't feel like you are, you know, Kid Rock American Badass in this situation. It feels like you are always 5 seconds from death, which is interesting.
It's really, you know, the new Wolfenstein, The New Order starts with a gunner section similar to this, but like, as much as I think that is a way better game than this, it's like it's not as effective, and you don't feel as there, you know. Just I feel like this is a point where you see kind of the COD money and production value actually producing really effective results of just like, damn, I do feel like I am in that plane, and that plane sucks. You know, like, I do not want to be here.
Yeah. Have we talked about this before? Are the Woofy games Rotten games?
I think, and not necessarily by our definition, because they have like too much heart. But there is a lot of thinking about violence in those games. So I think at some point they should go on.
We'll add it to the list. So you save the day. Well, actually, someone saves your ass by the end of this level.
Yep.
And then you go to Okinawa, which, one of the southernmost islands of Japan, if not the southernmost main island. Anyway, and Jacob, this is the goddamn level that man, I think there's a lot going on in this level that makes it bad visually and mechanically. The first is, there's the cool idea that it is just, I don't know, maybe it's fucking typhoon season, in the Pacific here. So it's just storming and raining. There's a cutscene that talks about like, our guys are just like so downtrodden, quite literally, by this rain. It's really taking its toll. So you play a level that is completely gray and raining, but it's a game from, I don't know, 2010, 2011. So everything has that Gears of War sheen to it that's just shiny for no reason. Makes it impossible to see. It's dark. The enemies are in grass you can't see past, which means a lot of this level is firing at things you can't see that also feel like they are all clones of John Wick. And so that's annoying. Dudes are popping out of the ground at all times. And this is the worst offender of the grenade issue that I talked about last episode, where they will throw a grenade and the indicator does a terrible job of telling you how far or close you are to it, whether it's going to kill you or not. I had some grenades kill me with no indicator on the screen, and I got stuck in the opening 5 minutes of this level for about 30 to 40 minutes. Did you have any trouble with it?
So I didn't talk about this last week. At some point when I was a kid, or, when I was a teen playing through the Call of Duties, I started this campaign and I remembered that I didn't finish it, but I didn't remember where I got to.
Yeah.
And then I got to this level and I was like, this is the one that made me quit the game. Like truly, I was like, oh, this is exactly where I stopped.
It is fucking infuriating. I mean, like, it's hard because the game is hard. The difficulty is exacerbated by like just really bad choices. Like just not giving you clear sight lines on most of the enemies in this opening section. The part immediately after this has you hunkered down by 2 MGs that are effectively monster closets. Like you cannot kill them. Someone will always respawn and take the MG. But you also have to fight through a trench at the same time. So I had to crawl my way through it with a flamethrower. And you could all argue this is maybe realistic.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But realism does not always equal fun. And I'm playing a video game.
It is that hard. It's that hard line to walk where I think people are going to be listening to this and thinking like, hey, you were complaining about how they were not communicating, the soldiers, whatever, enough. Here it is, the misery of war. And it's like, fair point.
Fair.
But, this, for it to kind of introduce this in like the 11th level of the game does not feel like it is now making a commentary on the war, which has presumably been miserable the whole time.
And I'd also say like the Berlin levels after this effectively communicate the misery of war in much more fun levels. Like those levels,
yeah. So
I thought were way more narratively effective than this one, which I just thought was bullshit.
Yeah, so it's like, look, if you want to write an essay about this level, and how it's good and how it does it, like, good. I think Blake's description of crawling through a trench with a flamethrower sounds pretty cool listening to it, but it's like, oh man, I feel like they could have got the same feelings without just being like, well, I guess I'm starting over again. The endlessly respawning enemies, which is something that the series has mostly done away with. It just sucks, man, because you don't know what you're supposed to do. You don't know if you're just supposed to, like, sit there until they stop coming, or if you're supposed to, like, push forward anyway.
And pushing forward is such a gamble in this game because of the goddamn grenades that it's like, I just found myself fighting some arenas. I'll be like, I guess I'm just here for 10 minutes. Fuck it. Like, clicking on heads feels engaging enough that I'm not going to be, like, bored to tears by a lot of them, that I would just fight through 10 minutes of guys running to the exact same locations. But the MGs, I just couldn't do it. Like, because the AI in this game, I think, is largely pretty dog shit.
Yeah.
Like, you will have enemies that just stand there and don't fire at anyone. You will have friendlies that will stand in front of an enemy firing directly at you and not shoot them. And the MGs are programmed as such that, like, every shot hits only you. And so if you can't actually kill them and get rid of them, but you have other enemies to the right of you, so you have, MGs way far on the horizon and the dudes in your immediate that are throwing grenades and shooting at you, like, it becomes this, like, unwinnable battle where it's like, what do I focus on? You are not telling me as the player, I need more information to understand who I should be targeting. Because if the MGs are just going to respawn, I should forget about them. But it also puts me in a space where I can't move to engage with the other enemies. So I'm just kind of stuck in this 4-foot place, screaming at my computer.
And this is also a level where you have to throw essentially C4. You have to throw satchel charges into bunkers and blow them up. But like you only have a couple of these, and like you can miss, and then there's like no ammo refill, or at least there isn't like the last bunker, but yeah, you can just like fuck yourself and you don't have a way to get more of them.
I forgot about that part of it. Oh my god. You start the level and it's like, yo, if you press 5, you get these crazy bombs. You should use that. And I was like, thanks. So I like used them in the beginning of the level, got kind of far after a few tries. And then it was like, okay, blow up this bunker. And I was like, where's the bombs, dude? And they're like, no. And so I had to restart the level, and then that's where I got stuck for so long. I completely forgot about that. That is bullshit.
It's interesting thinking about Call of Duty as a series that, I mean, I'm sure it was true then as well, but is probably one of these obsessively QA-tested games because they have the budget to do it, of just being like, look, if something is too much of a hard edge, we're going to cut it off. Like, ultimately, we want players to be able to complete the levels. And this does feel like one of those levels where it's just like, I don't know. I don't know if they wanted this to be a huge step up in difficulty, or if it just was not receiving the same kind of QA, or, maybe because of the game's, like, the really rapid development that these games were under at this point, if they just kind of didn't have enough time to do the same thing. But it's like, this feels like a level that you put in front of a bunch of players and they'd be like, yo, you need to rework this a little.
You wanna know a fun fact about Activision QA?
What's that?
I assume they have multiple offices, but one of them is in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, home of Game Informer. Hey. That's where Game Informer's first office was. There you go.
They did it.
Big Activision QA office, like 7 miles from my house. Just a little fun fact. It's a real stinker of a fucking level. I hated it and almost quit the game and watched it on YouTube. But I'm glad I didn't, because I did like all the levels after it.
Yeah, so the next level is the last Pacific Theater level, and you're assaulting Shuri Castle. This is...
Oh, I take it back. I liked all the levels after this one. I didn't like this level either.
I liked this one... conceptually, in that the idea of assaulting a castle is cool, I guess.
I think this is where the peak of my uncomfortableness with the portrayal of the Japanese army really reached.
Oh boy, does it? Yeah,
because it's like, as we've talked about, they do take steps to humanize the Nazi enemies in some ways. At the very least, baseline that, like, hey, these are humans with fears and worries about being shot in the head. And the Japanese are just like, these are savage people from a scary island somewhere, and they are monsters, and we need to bomb the fucking shit out of them. And it's like, they can be enemies that either have faceless enemies or humanize your enemies. You can't have one be one way, you can't have the other be the other way. It doesn't work. It's like, there's a narrative dissonance between the Nazis and the Japanese here.
Yeah, I haven't seen this movie in a long time, and so it's very possible that it has politics that I've forgotten about because it was directed by Clint Eastwood. But Letters from Iwo Jima, is a movie that is, sorry, I'm gonna Google this because it's been long enough since I've seen it. But it's like, it is largely from a Japanese perspective, And it's, it is showing the kind of like hell that fighting for them was also, and it's like a lot of the characters are Japanese, and, you're seeing the same kind of tactics as you see here, but the movie's able to afford them a level of humanity that this game just seems completely uninterested in.
Okay, so like this is a weird thing, and like we're not gonna have the answer because we did not work on this game or write this game, but it's like humanizing Nazis is certainly a choice.
Mm-hmm.
But like, why do you think they did that and then not the Japanese? Like, what do you think the decision was there to be like, we're gonna humanize one set of enemies, even at the most bare minimum, but not give it to the other side?
I mean, I think that it is largely a function of tactics that they wanted the Japanese to feel like this kind of like unpredictable and surprising enemy who would, abandon any kind of like preservation of life to run at you and try and kill you. And I think they like, they wanted the vibe of the levels to be like, isn't it scary to be fighting an enemy that seems to have no self-preservation, that is willing to give up everything? And I think they are partially correct in that fighting that it is scary, but it comes at the cost of like when the game doesn't go into like, hey, why don't they have any preservation instinct? And it doesn't even pretend to be interested in that question, then it just seems like you're fighting an army of like lunatics, like it just doesn't kind of like, it doesn't give them enough context to make that seem like a human behavior and not just like a wild animal thing.
Did you know that World at War was banned in Japan for gory violence against Japanese soldiers? It should be noted that the ban was quickly lifted according to tvtropes.org.
Oh, weird. Yeah. I mean, anyway, this level, this is the level where I don't think we need to, talk through the beats of it, except for kind of what happens at the end, because this is the part that you mentioned, where the Americans kind of get mad in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, like, you just bombed the fucking ever-loving shit out of them, and the idea is that, like, the Americans have been here after the Peleliu mission longer than they were promised. They had to do another month on this trip through the Pacific, like, and they're just so over it. Like, dudes are sick. Your general Kiefer Sutherland is murdered. Your sergeant, I guess.
Yeah, well, and I mean, do you remember like how? Because that's another
you can
big point.
You confront two enemies, and one pulls a grenade and just blows up your sergeant.
But they're like, you're like, hey, they're surrendering. Yeah. And then it turns out that it is a ruse and they blow themselves up. But it is, again, it's very much a contrast to the Soviets, who you have been killing essentially surrendering soldiers for much of the game. And in here, it's like the American attempt to take them prisoner or whatever backfires, and is then your impetus to be like, all right, no mercy, like that. There's no point in reasoning with them. Which is also the tact taken for why America dropped the bombs.
Yeah,
was that they will never give up, and there's no point even trying. Which I won't get into this, but there's a very good and very long video by the YouTuber Sean about the kind of like that this narrative of dropping the bombs is not an accurate one. You know, and that it seemed like there were many paths forward that were not nuking, but I think, COD is basically taking the perspective here, like, there is no hope of diplomacy, and so the only thing you can do is fight.
Can I tell a story about Call of Duty, Blake Hester, and the great island nation of Japan?
Please do.
It's this. I just am never going to have another point to tell this story on this podcast, but I think it's funny. In 2019, I went to Japan for 13 days with my parents. It was a wonderful trip, a lifelong dream to visit Japan, as many people have. And, it took us like 20 hours of travel to get there. We got there super late, got lost trying to find our first hotel, like just so late. I remember we get in the hotel just exhausted. And I lay there and I'm like, well, before I fall asleep, I'll just turn on TV just to see what that's like, The very first thing I see in Japan, this is like my first time out of the country outside of going to Tijuana for an hour one time. I turn on the TV and I see a trailer for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Of all the American games you could advertise right now, this is the first thing I see in a different country. It's very funny.
It's actually, their targeted advertising is so sophisticated. They recognized you as a games writer, and they were just like, hey, we know what to show him.
It was interesting, though. It's like a live action trailer that just like... would not have played. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like not something you would see in America if we did a live action Call of Duty trailer these days, where it would just feel like Black Hawk Down. Like it felt very different, which was kind of interesting. But yeah,
well, because remember there was that whole sequence of live Call of Duty trailers that were like celebrities, where it was like Jonah Hill and like just kind of people you wouldn't expect. It was like, oh, it's Brie Larson is playing Call of Duty or whatever. So then remember last in the Modern Warfare thing, I talked about the movie Zulu, about how it's like kind of British colonialists defending themselves from like a million Africans running at them. This was even more that, where after, like, while you are essentially waiting for your air support to come in at the end of this level, it is just this charge of what seem like hundreds of people just running at you, and it both sucks to play, and it is, I think, the kind of peak of this game's just, like, it feels like a zombie game, because they're just running at you, they're barely taking cover. And it's like, I just don't think that they earned their coded barbarism of this enemy, if that makes sense.
I also don't think it's coded by the end, because I heard one of my friendly characters call them like literally monsters or barbarians or savages.
Oh yeah. Like, I remember that too. I mean,
it's mask off at this point.
There's when I was in college and studying race stuff, it's like the word savage is such a like ding 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 word, where it's like, that word virtually always racially coded. It's like no one calls someone else a savage if it's like, oh, another like white guy like me who went on a killing spree. It's like they're not the ones who were savages. All right, but at the end of that level, we get to kind of the 2-part finale, which I think is also best 2 missions of the game.
Probably,
I mean most interesting.
Feels the most modern Call of Duty as well. Like they're just like, they feel like AAA levels. Like they're wild.
Oh boy, do they. Yeah, so this is essentially, it's just a linear sequence. You are playing once again as the Soviets, and you are storming the Reichstag, the heart of Nazi Germany. And this is, I mean, amongst other things, just the most destroyed city. I mean, just like annihilated in a way that even now seeing is like pretty impressive.
Did that actually happen? Was that city that fucked in real life? It's Berlin, right?
I have to assume yes.
Oh yeah, God, I'm looking at pictures like holy shit. Yeah. Okay.
There's an interesting point that Face Full of Eyes makes in that video we were talking about last episode, about talking. It's like, hey, Hitler's body in a bunker is like 2 miles from where you are now, and it's like he is dead by that point, because this is just like the last gasp. But you are just kind of smashing your way through. They give you in these last couple levels essentially the most modern feeling gun, which is like an SMG that has like 100 round clip, whatever. Like, and so it, the pace of much of the combat is so slow because you're using like bolt action rifles.
Yeah.
And in this, you are kind of running and gunning in a way that has not really been possible through a lot of the rest of the game. The Germans that you're finding are like in like bombed out kitchens that they're using as communication outposts. It's like they look fucked. They are all completely like bandaged up and horrible looking.
Yeah, you're fighting a losing army effectively. Like there's really, I mean, there's a lot of enemies because it's the final mission of a video game, but like there are no preconceptions that like you're still trying to win. It's basically like, we've won, let's just kill everyone now, which statement in and of itself, if you ask me.
Yeah, there's that part. Well, so there's the part that you mentioned where you get to a place where there are like 4 dudes standing in kind of the well of like a subway entrance. And it's, you know, they're surrendering and there are a bunch of other people. And I have to say, I threw a Molotov at them. I cast the first stone.
I didn't. I had to fight my, base instinct, which is to kill Nazis. But I was curious to see what would happen, so I didn't. And it just, one of your
someone
other
else
dudes,
does.
Yeah, throws a Molotov on him, and the Reznov is like, yeah, you shouldn't have waited. And I was like, okay,
yeah,
that's that. And then you fight through the metro, which is kind of cool.
You fight through the metro. I mean, honestly, I think there are a couple underground places in the previous missions as well that are like scary in a way, like they're basically crawling through the like really small trenches and kind of like tunnels that like I think the Japanese have dug is like scary. And this is another thing where it's like you can hear the city just being bombed to shit above you and you're in the subway, and then at some point there's like water that breaks through, and so there's like a big flood in a subway tunnel, which personally is not something that I would like to experience.
There is a funny thing in this level where the lights keep going off, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, don't move! We gotta wait. We can't see them." And it's like the game actually isn't dark enough. You could just see everyone just as fine.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Shut up! I'm just gonna run through this fucking level like Doom, man."
And then you get into the Reichstag. You fight up the steps, and then you get into it. And another thing that it's like, I guess it's an obvious move, but I did really like is just they are playing kind of Nazi propaganda, like big music out of radios. And so these levels are essentially like diegetically scored very operatically, because it's like, hey, that music, it is built to pull on emotions, and it does. And so, like, going into the center of the Reichstag, which is this just enormous building, just like the biggest kind of space, and, this is, again, a real thing that you can look at pictures of, and having this music going and everything is like a pretty crazy feeling, and just feeling like you as the Soviets are this, like, wave that is crashing over the remaining army.
You shoot the giant eagle off the back of it with a rocket launcher too, which is very fun. This what would you call it? A theater room, whatever this room is. I really like that you can go. Yeah, you can go up on the 2nd or 3rd floor, and there's a really powerful sniper up there with tons of ammo. And I just was up there for like 15 minutes just sniping dudes. It felt so fucking good.
It's kind of, this was a section where, again, I was unclear. I was like, are they going to stop coming at some point? Like, am I just killing, like, infinitely respawning enemies?
I had that issue immediately outside this building on the stairs. Yeah. Like, it took for fucking ever for me to finally get past that.
Yeah. But eventually you get up to the 2nd floor. You see, like, a huge chandelier crash through the building. And then you get on top. Reznov has said to you several times, like, your character, who has virtually no characterization, he's like, hey, as long as you live, like, our spirit is alive, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so then you get on top of this roof, and you're carrying the flag to plant it, and there's like one dude remaining, and he shoots you. And Reznov then runs up and kills him, but you are still alive enough to, like, plant the flag. And this is, like, what did you make of that moment? Because I kind of didn't know how to, specifically being shot, I kind of didn't know how to feel.
I hate to admit this, I don't think I really thought too deeply about it, It's just like, it felt like drama at the end that wasn't necessarily needed. You know, I don't, maybe there's a wider statement to it, but it's just like, also part of me was like, I don't know, I could just planted the flag and the game could have been over. I'm not sure I needed this like whole dramatic moment of death, you know?
Yeah, I guess, it's like, because you don't die, like you don't like see him die, and so it feels either that it is like a statement about resilience, or it is kind of a metaphor for how deeply wounded, because it's like, hey, a whole lot of Soviets died in World War II, like them washing over Berlin like a wave only happened after millions of people died. And so, maybe it's signifying that, but it was weird for Reznov to be like, hey, as long as you're alive, our heart is alive, and then immediately just like bam, you get shot. Like, it felt like it was saying something, but I wasn't quite, I didn't quite know. But anyway, then you plant the Soviet flag, as we talked about. It is this interesting kind of mixed moment of haha, victory, the Nazis are going away, but also didn't I learn in history class that we fought these guys for like 60 years?
Yeah. And if you're in the generation below us, aren't we about to fight these guys for another 60 years right now? This appears to be an allusion or homage to a real photograph raising a flag over the Reichstag, which was taken by the photographer. Taken by a photographer whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce. But if you just Google raising a flag over Reichstag, you can see what the end of this level is kind of paying tribute to this famous World War II photo from the end of the siege of Berlin or whatever.
Blake, can I tell you something in confidence?
I mean, yeah, we're recording, but go for it.
So I'm pretty sure I'm going to live forever. I'm going to be the first immortal man.
Here we go.
I am big into long-term planning. Let me give you an example. Lifetime membership, that might last most people 30 years, 50 years. It's going to last me the next 10,000.
That's not exactly immortality, but nevertheless, I think I'm with you on this one. The two hosts of the hit gaming podcast, Something Rotten, we're going to live forever. Us and that dude who drinks his son's blood.
And here's the thing. For this month, just September 2023, you can actually buy a lifetime membership to Nebula by going to nebula.tv/somethingrotten. Lifetime. That's forever.
I feel like we haven't reminded people what a good deal Nebula is recently. It means you get every episode we release early, meaning you can listen to next week's show right now. It also means you can listen to Nebula-exclusive bonus episodes of the pod, where we keep some of our best guests under lock and key, such as, but not limited to, Gareth Damian Martin and Noah Caldwell-Gervais. And it means you don't have to hear ads like this one.
The listeners love our ads, though, Blake. They love hearing us be goofy.
Nah, I don't know about that.
When they join Nebula, they'll also get access to all my exclusive videos I've made for my YouTube channel, and, most importantly, they'll be supporting the show. Something Rotten has the space to get better and more ambitious because of people signing up for Nebula using our code, nebula.tv/somethingrotten.
Okay, but getting back to this immortality thing, what's your strategy?
I don't have a strategy per se. I'm just kind of hoping God will award it to me based on how many times I've beat Resident Evil 4.
Is that what Judaism is? I'm tired of the modern world, Jacob.
Oh, I can't wait to hear where this is going.
Everything is just like designed to be cheap and break after one use. It's all plastic, and it all just kind of sucks, and I just end up throwing it away. Except for this one thing.
Blake, if this is about Gundams...
Except for these two things. I'm talking about my Henson Razor, Jacob, the sponsor of this podcast. See, unlike everything else in my life, this is solid. It's metal. It's designed to stick around. And here's the wildest thing. Henson Shaving is also an aerospace parts manufacturer. I didn't know that until reading this right now. They're making and engineering their razors with the same kind of quality and precision. Do you know about the diving board problem, Jacob?
I absolutely do not.
So, all right, hear me out. So razor blades are like diving boards. If they stick out further, they wiggle more. And this wiggle is what causes cuts and razor burn and all that stuff you don't want on your face or other parts. But Henson razors are so engineered they only stick out 0.0013 inches, which means the blade doesn't wiggle at all, and so the shave is super smooth. The thing is like the stiffest diving board ever. This analogy, it works.
That's good. You're telling me it's good.
It's good! You can get one of these razors, which is also long-term and affordable and a sustainable way to shave, with a free box of blades by going to hintsandshaving.com and using the promo code ROTTEN. Hey, free box of blades. That's pretty rotten, huh?
Blake, I have to tell you, I was just kidding about all those questions I asked. I have a Henson razor, and I love it. It's so nice. hintsandshaving.com, promo code ROTTEN. You know, and as we talked about, I think the end of this game is just interesting for a couple reasons. I think it's interesting that the last mission is not one where you're playing as the Americans.
Sure.
You know, like the American victory came before this. The last lines being 60 million people died in this war, and then it's just like Call of Duty, World at War. You know, it's it is certainly ending kind of melancholy in a way that COD 4 arguably does, but Modern Warfare certainly does not. Black Ops does not. You know, all of these, like, you know, the COD games are usually like, hey, you know, the great sacrifice you made, here's what you get for it. And this one is not as decisive on that.
I agree. I agree. I also think just it's a AAA game, and it's never going to take it as far as I want. So beyond just that flash on screen and the acknowledgement of the fact all this shit was really terrible, I just think it's I think it just, like I said earlier, washes its hands of it by the end. You know, it's all right, and here's the credits. So that said, I think this is one of the most interesting Call of Duty games I have played. I would rather talk about this one than basically any other Call of Duty I've gone through.
Blake, I have to look something up, because apparently there is something that happens at the end of the credits.
Death by post-credits stinger.
It's only 30 seconds long. I'm watching it now. Oh, it is the Nazi Zombies intro.
Oh.
Because I think originally Nazi Zombies was an unlockable mode where you had to beat the campaign to play it. And then now you can just play it. I want to end this by telling a short story that I have about playing this game's multiplayer when I was a youth.
Yep.
During my first COD was Modern Warfare 2. I was obsessed with getting a nuke, a 25 kill streak, and you get the nuke, and it just ends the game, and you win. But I could never do it. I got, my maximum kill streak that I got with the nuke equipped was 21 or something. I could just never pull it off. In World at War, when you start the multiplayer, for your first 5 levels, they essentially put you in a baby lobby of other people who were only in the first 5 levels. And I had been playing so much Call of Duty that when I just decided to play World at War for a little bit, I started playing the multiplayer, and the first match I played, I got a 34 kill streak. And I was just are you fucking kidding me? I have been trying to do this in Modern Warfare 2 for months.
Yeah.
And just my first game at World at War, a game that does not have a tactical nuke that you can call in. And I just that is weirdly, up until now, because I never finished the campaign, that was my predominant memory of World at War.
That's hilarious. Call of Duty, summing it up. I have 2 questions.
Yes.
1, will you sum up your thoughts on these 2 games for me? B, 2, second question, a series we'll revisit for Something Rotten? Question mark, question mark, question mark?
Oh, look, genuinely something that I've been thinking about a lot. Black Ops seems like a game we should maybe play, and then I'm not sure what the other one would be. I know I beat Black Ops 2. I didn't beat Black Ops 3, and then 4 does not have a campaign, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, we could do Modern Warfare 2 because of No Russian, but I also feel I said my piece on No Russian 5 years ago, you know?
Yeah, I would rather almost do I don't know, COD 2 and then Black Ops, or something. We would need to figure it out. People say Advanced Warfare is actually a good one, but I didn't. Or no, not Advanced Warfare.
Infinite.
The one where they're in space. Infinite
Warfare.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if we've learned anything doing Something Rotten, we're not interested in a game being good.
That's true. My thoughts on Call of Duty. I think, as I said in the end of the COD 4 one, I think that these two games are really interesting because there is kind of a direction you could see that the series could have gone by looking at these two games that it did not. You know, like if every game made kind of efforts to be as thematically interesting as COD 4 and World at War, both of which are games that stumble a lot on their way to whatever theme they're maybe trying to do, but like are making an effort, I think that the series would just be more interesting. And instead, you know, the themes of the games have become more and more consistently, as you've said a million times, get our hands dirty to keep the world clean, which is just something that I'm not interested in playing a game about anymore. And so I'm glad that we played these, and I do think that the identity is not fully formed yet. And so what these games are able to do just feels a little outside what the series, being so kind of well understood, is now able to do.
I think, here's where I land on it. I think I hate Call of Duty.
Yeah.
I think I'll also play 100 hours of every new Call of Duty multiplayer because I love Call of Duty. Mm-hmm. And, but more to the point, I think, and this is something that just popped into my brain. I haven't thought much about it, but I do feel it in this moment. I think Call of Duty, every Call of Duty probably, is deserving of this level of analysis and criticism, if only because of the footprint they have on the game industry and, you know, who helps fund them, what they are about, their place in American pop culture. And I think that this is a much larger topic. I think they can show the importance of, I don't know how you want to put it, criticism, intellectual criticism of video games. Because I think, you know, I don't think our podcast where we said it was fucked up when you did this thing in your game is going to even reach anyone that works on these games. But I do think there is a value in holding these games, taking these games to task and talking about them beyond like Warzone, you know, which is like one of my favorite games of all time. And I think doing this series, which is the most I've ever thought about Call of Duty in the last 3 weeks, just like shows that it's like, I think the more of these things that come out, I've noticed the game's press and the criticism landscape has kind of wanted to wash their hands of engaging with them. And I think that's a mistake. And we should be like, every year, I think we should, you know, when a new COD comes out, we should be giving it like really putting it under the fucking microscope and be like, what's going on here?
I totally agree. And I mean, I think, you know, it is easy. And I was guilty of it just minutes ago of kind of saying, well, they're all the same, you know, after a certain point or whatever. But that is not actually true. You know, the games do kind of, they have different things, even if I think they're all kind of going in the same direction. But also it's just like, yeah, you know, for the same reason that we should be writing about like Fortnite and Roblox, is like these things are shaping the culture, and you can either let them do that uncriticized, or you can try and figure it out. And even if you won't stop it, you will give other people who are interested in understanding the forces that shape the culture something to hold on to, so it doesn't just feel like this alien, unknowable force that billions of people play.
And I think, like, you know, I think Fortnite is so deserving of like this level of, or just like that level of criticism or analysis because of the way it shapes like commercialized pop culture. And I think that is largely evil in a lot of ways. I also think it's very fascinating in a lot of ways.
And I think we do like the game. We play Fortnite all the time.
And I also hate Fortnite. You know, I also think it's largely evil. These things are not mutually exclusive. I think like Call of Duty is in this like weird league where it's like there are cases of it shaping the, if not political landscape, like the ways the military machine operates and how it recruits these days and how it, you know, brings youth in. and how terrible that is across the board. I have yet to see any evidence that Call of Duty as a recruitment tool is good for the fabric of our nation or any other, war machine. But like,
right.
I think like, so the more colleagues of mine or even myself or peers have been like, it's another fucking Call of Duty, whatever. I think that's actually a mistake, and we should be taking these games to task every single time and praising them where necessary. Sure, we had lots of good to say about at least this one. I don't remember saying much good about the last one, but definitely like being like, hey, what does this mean as the series goes on and our relationship with the series goes on, is just like fucking video game history goes on. Like I think we should be paying closer attention the way we used to with these games. That's it. That's what I think.
But what do you, the listener, think? Please write in at somethingrottenpodcast@gmail.com so we can answer your questions and thoughts on this particularly, because I think that so much of these games' reputation is bound up in when people played them, and both of us came to these campaigns pretty late, and so I would really like to hear from people who played COD 4 or World at War when they came out, kind of what their feelings were about them, or anything else. We'll do a Q&A like always, and I would love to hear about it.
And by God, listener, you need to go to nebula.tv/somethingrotten, sign up for a Nebula subscription so you can get our bonus ad-free early episodes and all that. But the bonus pod for this one is going to be a barn burner. I can already tell you, Jacob.
I can't wait.
I've got some heavy hitters I'm bringing, and you can only hear that if you're a Nebula subscriber, which does cost money. But, you get access to all Jacob's videos. You get access to all our stuff. You get access to that cool road trip series that Nebula is doing. What's that thing called?
Oh, what? Jet lag.
Yeah, you get access to that. That looks really cool. Doesn't Philosophy Tube have like a play?
Oh, yeah.
On Nebula right now? Like, sign up for that shit. Also, you're going to get to hear me pitch Jacob on a Yakuza movie and tie it into World War II.
Let's go. All right. Well, for Blake Hester, my name is Jacob Geller. We are the Call of Duty Scholars, and we will be back soon.
I don't know if that's true.
Look, I think now we've probably devoted more words to these games' stories than most other people who've played them.
That's just because it's a podcast, though. It's a weird numbers game.
Bye.